For thousands of years, we have gazed upon the cross as a silent monument, a frozen symbol of religion. But tonight, I invite you to close your eyes and hear the wind howling through the limestone hills of Jerusalem. What do you see? A conqueror? Yes. A king? Yes. But before the crown of glory was placed upon his head, he wore the crown of fear. Christ did not descend to this earth to stand on a pedestal and observe your pain from a safe distance. He stepped into the mire where you are falling, into the shadows where you are hiding, to say, I am not just saving you, I am breathing your labored breath. This is a journey through the 10 layers of spiritual hell that the Creator endured to trade his suffering for your freedom. Chapter 1. The fear of loneliness, the solitude of the cosmos. Loneliness is not being alone, it is being among thousands and realizing no one can reach your soul. Imagine a night without stars in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus, the Word who wove the galaxies into existence, is now kneeling on the cold, hard earth beneath ancient, gnarled olive trees. The weight of human history, every sin, every tear, begins to press upon his shoulders like a mountain of lead. He seeks comfort from his inner circle, Peter, James, and John, but instead of a word of strength, he finds only the indifference of sleep. This is the fear of absolute isolation. He experienced the sensation of being abandoned by the universe. Why? So that when you stand in a crowded room yet feel utterly invisible, you know he is there. He understands the elderly man in a nursing home waiting for a phone call that never rings, the young soul in the grip of depression feeling like a wandering planet. He was lonely so that his presence could become your eternal breath. He transformed loneliness into communion, proving that even when the world forgets you, the Creator stays awake for you. Chapter 2. The fear of betrayal, the sting from the holy table. A wound from an enemy hurts the flesh, but a wound from a brother bleeds into the soul. In the upper room, the air was thick with tension. Jesus looked into the eyes of Judas, the man who had walked the dusty roads with him, the treasurer of the ministry. He knew the coming kiss would carry the taste of death. Betrayal is a destructive fear. It shatters the foundations of trust and makes us want to lock our hearts forever. Jesus allowed himself to be betrayed by a kiss, the most sacred symbol of affection. He tasted the bitterness of a lie to liberate us from the poison of resentment. Have you been abandoned by a spouse? Stabbed in the back by a partner? Christ whispers to you, I received the kiss of Judas so that you could learn the power of forgiveness. He turned betrayal into a tool for eternal faithfulness. He accepted being sold for 30 pieces of silver to prove that your value in his eyes is beyond any earthly price. Chapter 3. The fear of shame, the cloak of humiliation. Pride is the heaviest chain of humanity, and shame is the fire that burns it away. Look at the courtyard of Pilate. The Holy One is stripped bare. This nakedness was not just physical, it was the exposure of the soul to the mockery of the masses. They spat upon him, they knelt in mock worship to ridicule his divinity. The fear of being looked down upon, of losing face before society, is what stifles our freedom. Jesus wore the tattered purple robe and the crown of thorns to destroy the power of false prestige. He embraced humiliation to clothe you in the garments of celestial royalty. When you are belittled, when you feel small under the judgment of the world, remember that Christ took the spit so you could lift your head. He transformed shame into glory, teaching us that a person's worth is not found in how the world sees them, but in how God loves them. Chapter 4. The fear of physical agony, the trembling of the flesh. The body is a temple, and pain is the ultimate test of faith. Medicine calls it hematidrosis, bloody sweat. The psychological pressure was so immense that capillaries ruptured under the skin. Jesus feared the coming ordeal. The Roman flagrum, whips embedded with bone and lead designed to shred muscle from bone. He feared the sensation of nails driving through the central nervous system. He was not a superhero immune to pain. He was a man of flesh and blood. He tasted extreme physical agony to walk beside every patient in a hospital bed, every victim of violence. He wanted you to know that he does not stand outside human suffering. Every wound on his body is proof that he paid for your healing. By his stripes, we are healed. He feared the pain to give you the strength to endure the inevitable sufferings of this life. Chapter 5. The fear of failure, the burden of rejected faith. Failure is not falling down, it is believing that your efforts were meaningless. From the outside, the cross looked like a catastrophic failure. A king without a kingdom. A master without disciples. Dying between two thieves. Jesus experienced the fear that his mission would be forgotten. That his blood would soak into the dry ground of human hearts and produce nothing. He felt the weight of the sower whose seeds are eaten by birds. But in this chapter, we see him turn failure into the victory of the resurrection. He teaches us that the road to glory always passes through the valley of rejection. Are you failing in your career? Are you seeing your efforts to raise your children crumble? Christ says, the grain of wheat must die to produce fruit. He accepted the label of failure from the world to open the path to eternal success in the kingdom of heaven. Chapter 6. The fear of being misunderstood, the prison of falsehood. To be the truth and be labeled a lie is the ultimate psychological exile. Imagine the suffocating weight of being the light of the world while being accused of being a servant of darkness. As Jesus stood before the Sanhedrin and later Pilate, he faced the fear of the identity theft of the soul. He spoke of a kingdom of love, yet they heard a threat of rebellion. He spoke of spiritual freedom, yet they saw only political subversion. This is the fear of being permanently misinterpreted. It is the agony of the heart that remains unheard. Jesus felt the frustration of every person who has been gaslighted, every innocent soul whose words have been twisted to serve a malicious agenda. He chose not to defend himself with legions of angels, but with a sacred silence. Why? To prove that the truth does not need the validation of a crowd to be real. He was misunderstood so that when you feel the world doesn't see your heart, you can find refuge in the one who sees all. He broke the power of reputation to give you the power of character. Chapter 7. The fear of spiritual void, the dark night of the sun. Faith is not a feeling, it is the decision to stay in the room when the lights go out. As the hours on the cross stretched toward noon, a physical darkness covered the land, but an even deeper darkness covered the soul of the Lamb. This was the withdrawal of consolation. For eternity, the Son had basked in the warmth of the Spirit, but now he entered the void. This is the fear that every believer dreads, the feeling that God has disappeared. Jesus entered the spiritual desert to sanctify your moments of doubt. He felt the coldness of a silent heaven so that he could stand beside you in your depression and your dry seasons. When you cry out and hear only your own echo, remember that Christ has already mapped that emptiness. He persisted in love even when he couldn't feel the Father's hand. He conquered the void so that your emptiness could be filled with his resilient hope. Chapter 8. The fear of death, the threshold of the unknown. The author of life faced the one enemy he never created, the end. Death was an intruder in God's creation, and now the Creator had to face it as a victim. This chapter explores the biological and metaphysical dread of the final breath. Jesus looked into the mouth of the grave, a dark, cold abyss that had swallowed every generation before him. He felt the life force, the Zoe dollar of God, being squeezed out of his human lungs. He did not walk into death with stoic indifference. He walked into it with the primal terror of a living being facing extinction. He tasted the venom of the grave so that he could extract it. By fearing death, he destroyed its power. He turned the tomb from a dead-end street into a gateway. Now, when you face the end of your road, you don't face a wall. You face a door that Christ has already unlocked from the other side. Chapter 9. The fear of bearing sin, the purity in the sewer. Purity does not coexist with filth, it consumes it at a terrible cost. This is the most supernatural of all fears. Imagine a being of perfect, blinding holiness being forced to become the very thing he finds most repulsive. On the cross, the sins of the world, every act of cruelty, every perversion, every drop of innocent bloodshed, were poured into the soul of Jesus. He felt the viscosity of human evil clinging to his spirit like black tar. He experienced a supernatural nausea. He felt the shame of the thief, the guilt of the murderer, and the pride of the tyrant as if they were his own. He feared the stain because it threatened his union with the Father. He swam through the sewer of human history to pull you out of the muck. He took your filth so that you could wear his brilliance. He was stained so that you could be forever stainless. Chapter 10. The fear of abandonment, the rupture of eternity. The divine divorce that purchased our eternal adoption. We reach the summit of agony. The cry that split the heavens, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? This was the fear of being forsaken. For the first and only time in eternity, the communion of the Trinity was ruptured. The Father had to turn his face away as the Son bore the judgment of the world. Jesus became a spiritual orphan in that moment. This is the ultimate fear of every human heart, to be truly, finally unwanted. Jesus took that rejection into his own heart so that you would never have to experience it. He was cast out so that you could be brought in. He was forsaken so that God could say to you, I will never leave you nor forsake you. The rupture of the Son became the bridge for the children. We have traveled through the 10 layers of the Lord's fear. We have seen him lonely, betrayed, shamed, pained, failed, misunderstood, empty, dying, stained, and abandoned. But the story does not end at the 10th fear. It ends at the empty tomb. The fears were real, but they were not the victors. They were the price paid for a freedom that no power on earth or in hell can take away from you. The scars on Christ's hands are no longer marks of trauma. They are the 10 keys of victory. If you are listening to this and you feel paralyzed by your own fears, look to the one who has already conquered them. He didn't just survive the darkness, he reclaimed it. He turned your nightmares into his trophies. Today, the stone is rolled away. The chains are broken. The darkness has been defeated from the inside out. Go forth in peace, for the one who understands you best is the one who loves you most. Your dawn has broken. You are finally home.